Michael with United Veterans Worldwide for another session with a very talented and professional veteran who is doing some amazing work that I really wanted to showcase on this channel for everyone to participate and see and maybe get inspired by. And so I want to introduce you to Sach today. And Sach, I'd like to give you a little bit of time here to kind of introduce yourself. And then after that point, we'll go maybe backwards in time and look at maybe why you went into the military, what you did, and then fast forward a little bit about your military experience, and then we'll bring it back to the end of your advocacy and what you're doing in those roles.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Sach, and I go by Sach in Motion. I have various different social media accounts. And I've been a law enforcement officer for 18 years, had a short stint in the military, about a year and a half, and, struggled with my own mental health like many of us do. And through the last 4 years, I've found a way to kind of manage it, and that's through advocacy work and ultra running. And so over the last 3 years, I've raised over $80,000 for veterans and first responders with occupational stress injuries, all through my running endeavors. And that's who I am.
Yeah, and that to me is amazing. Did your love of running come from your time in the military or the police, or was it already there inside of you before you even started those adventures?
Yeah, I hate running. Still do. Still kind of do.
Are you serious?
I started. Yeah, I started running 3 years ago during the pandemic.
Yeah,
that's when I first started running. Yeah, so I didn't really have a love of it. I wrestled in high school, and even on the wrestling team, I was the worst runner on the team. So it wasn't a natural talent at all.
That is amazing to me. That is amazing to me. And where did you grow up?
So I was born in London, Ontario, Canada, and lived there for a few years until my parents moved to the Toronto area, Toronto, Canada, in Ontario, so biggest city in the country. And then from there, my dad was an electrical engineer. So he was transferred to a company in the Dallas area. I believe it was called Richardson, Texas.
Okay.
So went down to Dallas, and I went to high school in a town called Plano, northeast of Dallas.
I know it well.
Went to high school there, and lived in the Dallas area for about 6-7 years until I returned back to Canada.
And so you maintain a dual citizenship then?
No, unfortunately, at the time, my dad was an engineer. He was in the process of getting his green card and all the documentation. And then, unfortunate things happen from time to time. So he ended up getting laid off right before he was able to get his green card.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And so at that time, my dad was left with a decision to move back to Canada or figure out how to make the Dallas area work. And, I was in grade 9 at the time, so my dad really didn't want to pull me out of school again to return back to Canada. And so he bought a business. He opened up a restaurant. So he had a business visa, so no green card.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Well, I haven't told our listeners this, but I actually am dual citizen with Canada. My mother was born in New Brunswick, and I lived in Alberta for a couple of years serving a mission for my church. And absolutely loved the experience, love the provinces up there that I've been able to see. I haven't spent a lot of time in Toronto, although everybody tells me I've got to go back and I've got to spend time in Toronto. So it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, man. You know what it is, man. I love United States and I love Canada. And I love the people. I love the diversity of environments and the diversity of the people of both countries, minus all the other external factors that are affecting various different things, i.e. politics and whatnot. But fundamentally, man, North America, I love it. Yeah.
I've still got a lot of family up there. They used to live in North Vancouver. They moved, They moved to Oliver, BC. So that's where they kind of reside now, and I get to visit them every once in a while when I travel for work, and it's been an amazing experience. But Sach, you mentioned mental health, and that's not a new topic to this channel. I've talked about my own journey when I came through combat arms with infantry, and then jumping into the special operations side, civil affairs. operating in small teams. I buried a lot of things that were normal for a combat environment, and it seemed as if when I stopped operations and retired medically because of my shoulder, everything hit like a tidal wave. And I, although I felt so grounded in so many ways, I started to drown. And I grasped for help wherever I could. But there were a couple of things that really stayed front and center to me that I think really guided my journey in mental health to get stronger. One was I had a family unit at home that wouldn't give up on me, uh, and always encouraged me to take that next step in my therapies, in my journey. The second was physical. I always kept working out, and I would invite guys over in the morning to connect and find that connection, and I would lift weights with them. And in so many ways, those two things together really, really kept me away from that line of ending my own journey short. And maybe you can walk us through a little bit about your journey in mental health and what you have done, as you've already mentioned, Sach in motion, but what you have done to keep yourself mentally healthy.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a bit of background just to kind of lead up to
Yeah,
it, because
please.
I think that might be a bit important.
Okay.
I've struggled with my mental health most of my life.
Mm.
So anxiety, depression has
Yep.
been there. I just didn't know what it was called, and I didn't know what was going on. So I kind of am a hard charger type of guy where I just kind of keep my head down and keep moving forward without observing. Or back then, I used to do things without observing my mental health and how I was functioning.
Yeah.
So for me, I self-medicated most of the time, drinking, or I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but definitely binge drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would drink quite frequently on weekends and whatnot. So that was a lot of how I managed things. And, I obviously, in my 30s, I was fairly active once I was working with the in law enforcement. I was a kind of a competitive bodybuilder for a period of time, and then also a competitive jiu-jitsu player, so I would compete in various different jiu-jitsu tournaments, and
Awesome.
so that was kind of helping managing things
Yeah.
for a time.
Yeah.
But then the pandemic, well, before the pandemic, I went through a divorce,
Yeah.
and that really kicked me. That really took me for a downward spiral,
Yeah.
because I think, most of my life I kind of kept things together with a Band-Aid rather than really resolving a lot of my problems, a lot of my issues. And, the divorce kind of presented me with the type of person I actually was rather than who I thought I was.
Mm.
And, so I reflected a lot because, truth be told, I was the squeaky wheel in that marriage. I was probably one of the guy who precipitated a lot of the issues in that relationship. My ex-wife was, an awesome person, and I hadn't done the work that I needed to do before even getting married.
Mm.
So now, when that happened, man, I was unhappy because I was like, man, I really hurt a lot of people. And it really exacerbated my anxiety and depression a bit more.
Mm.
And but at that time, it was almost like a rock bottom for me. And I was like, okay, man, I got to get my stuff together. I got to figure it out. And I had a 2-year-old daughter, and who's 7 now, but she was 2 at the time. And so yeah, for me, it was just a process of trying to do a bit of self-discovery. Right after, the divorce is happening, the separation, all these things, financial, that started really taking a toll on me because I wanted to own my responsibilities in the marriage in terms of my contribution to it kind of falling apart.
Right.
So, I didn't, I didn't fight much when it came to the divorce in terms of financially. So, I had financial stresses with the divorce in terms of who I actually was, and then work stressors. In law enforcement for a number of years,
Yeah.
I started dealing with some issues as it related to that stuff. So what did I do, man? I made a commitment to myself at that time. I was like, okay, I'm not going to drink. Like, if I drink right now, it's going to probably be a wrap. Like I'll probably go down some sort of negative areas that I knew if I did, it would probably be bad. So I made sure, okay, we're not going to drink.
Yeah.
And
so can I interrupt you right there? I just want to hit this point really hard, and I've talked to my audience about this a lot. I've lost a lot of friends to suicide, and the number one catalyst that's taken them there is alcohol. It's a downer drug. It just is a spiral down, and so I'll continue to advocate for putting off the alcohol as a form of coping, and rather use it as a social or something else, but not as a coping mechanism, because it will and always has led to destruction.
Well, I know for sure it did for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, just like you, I've got buddies who went down that road, and some are here, and some are not.
Yeah.
And you minus that alcohol, maybe it could have been different. So, anyways, for me, I made sure, okay, we're not drinking, at least for now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then the pandemic started kicking off, and up here in Canada, it was pretty. The lockdowns were pretty significant, and so I moved out of the house I was living with my ex-wife, and because properties are so expensive here, we had a basement suite of the house that we bought together. So I moved into the basement suite. So it was kind of basically like an apartment on its own, separated from everything. And I think, to be honest, man, I think that even that damaged me, I think, even more, hearing my daughter run around upstairs, but not able to kind of connect. And, it didn't have very many windows. And at the time, we had a certain schedule at work where we were doing a 2-week on, 2-week off schedule, so that if COVID affected anyone in the operation, it wouldn't shut down the whole airport, because I was an immigration and customs officer.
Yeah.
So we were trying to figure out ways to manage that. And so now, 2 weeks at work and then 2 weeks at home, I didn't have very many windows, and I'm locked in. Right. So now I'm like, oh man, what do I do with myself? So now I'm like ruminating a lot more. Right. And then I was like, okay, man, I got to sort this out. So then I wasn't a huge reader at the time. So I was like, okay, man, maybe I need to, learn some stuff.
Yeah.
So I picked up Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership.
Yep. Great book.
And amazing book, man. At least for me at the time, 100% was very, and just, I don't think it really shared anything that I didn't kind of already know, but it reaffirmed things, and it kind of clarified things for me a bit more. Mm-hmm. So then I started taking ownership of things that I felt I needed to take ownership of. But it's still, at that point, I was still a hot mess, man. Yeah. My anxiety was all over the place. I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping maybe 2-3 hours a night. I eventually ended up having a major depressive episode, where, I wasn't sleeping for months, and I was still working. I was still doing all the things, but it was just like barely keeping it together.
Yep.
And, I started listening to podcasts and various different types, psychological ones, things that I can kind of maybe get some tools to help myself. Mm-hmm. And then I picked up David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me, his book.
Great.
And I read the first 2 chapters. I didn't finish it at the time, but I read the first 2 chapters. And at that time, what I got out of the first 2 chapters was chase adversity or do hard things.
Yeah.
And
that's my motto on this channel, is do hard things.
Well, awesome, man. It's an awesome motto. Yeah. And I'll tell you why I think it's an awesome motto.
Yeah.
For me at the time, hard things was running, and I misinterpreted what he was trying to get at.
Okay.
I took it as physical hard things.
Okay.
Because I was so one-dimensional at the time. That's all I thought about. And I thought, okay, what's hard for me to do? Running. I haven't run since high school. I was the worst running guy in my team. I was just terrible. And I thought, okay, that's hard. Let me do that. And so I started in that space, man. I would run. Okay, well, I got to do it in miles. So I would run 3 miles 3 times a week. I would set 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and just do like a 3-mile run.
Yeah.
And, I was a lot bigger at the time in terms of physically more, jacked.
Yeah.
I was about 200 pounds. I was 200 pounds, and not that quote unquote ideal physique to run. And, but I still did. And, my times weren't super fast. Mm-hmm. I just kind of got out there and did my thing. And through that process, I started, pushing the envelope for myself in terms of trying to use running as a tool to understand myself better. And so long story short, started running. Within a few months, I said, okay, let me test myself. Let's see if I can run a half marathon, 13 miles, just on my own, right? So I got home after work, went out for a 13-mile run, and it wasn't pretty, man. It was like an ugly run. It was like terrible. You know, it wasn't super fast, and it was probably like 3 hours to run it, you know?
Yeah.
But what it did for me was at the end of it, I felt really good about myself. It gave me a bit of self-confidence, a little bit of self-worth, because I did something that I never thought I was going to do.
Yes.
I did something that no one forced me or told me to do. It was just something that I needed to do, and it made me feel good, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, wait a second. Let me lean into that a bit more, because if I'm feeling that, let me see what else I can do. And full disclosure, I'm a pretty big introvert. I don't really hang out with a lot of people. I don't go out that much, and so it was kind of easy for me to kind of transition into that space and just focus on what I needed to focus on. So within a few months, I was running about 6 miles a day.
Yeah.
Probably in and around February 2021. I was in and around 6 miles a day at that point, which was like unheard of for me. I was like, wow. And I was still lifting weights, and I was still kind of doing as much as I possibly could. And so when I got to that, I was like, okay, what else can I do? Because I got here.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay.
And I heard a guy named Cameron Haynes on that podcast. And Cameron Haynes is a ultra endurance runner, a bow hunter, seemed like an all around cool guy as I saw him on that podcast. And he was in his 50s, mind you, and he's probably in his almost 60 or whatever. But I was listening to him on this podcast, and at the time he was training to run the Moab 240 in Utah, right? And he was training to do that. And I had no clue that these things existed.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there were people out there that were doing these types of things.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, what's he doing? And then he would talk about how he would train for it. Now, he was working full time. He'd run a half marathon in the morning, 12, 13 miles in the morning. And then after work, do another 12, 13. And I was like I was inspired. But I was inspired by that. Like, honestly, I was inspired by that. And I was like, man, I want to do that. Now, I said that to myself without having a clue on how to do it.
Yeah.
It's just like no clue. And you know what? I think a lot of us probably feel those things. A lot of us probably think, I want to do that, but don't have a clue on how to do it. I guess for me, the difference might be is like I took action to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And so for me, a bit of curiosity and then a bit of passion was ignited. And then I took a bit of action. And so what I did was I said, okay, put that on the back burner. Let me see if I can run a half marathon every single day. So I set up a plan for myself to get to run a half marathon every single day over a 10-week sort of program that I created for myself. I started with 7 miles and then increased it to the half marathon point. And after 10 weeks, I got there. And I was still going to work. And I was canine handler toward the end of my career. So, still managing the dogs, still doing the things that I needed to do. Now, everything wasn't perfect, but I was doing the things.
Yeah.
Right. And
you were setting goals and getting those goals accomplished, which is a big thing for our minds, right?
Well, yeah, they're kind of like dopamine hits, achieving something, then getting that dopamine hit. And after I ran, and look, it wasn't even after I ran. During the process of those 10 weeks, I was developing through that process. I was learning about who I was and understanding what kind of person I am. And so it's not just like the end state or the end goal.
Yeah.
It's the process of getting to that end goal and what you learn through it. And I learned a ton over those 10 weeks.
So muscles hold memories, like our body keeps score. When we battle depression, when we battle anxiety, the muscles in our body remember this. So in your journey of running and discovery, did you ever experience any kind of emotional release in that process?
Man, I was so in the throes of anxiety and depression that I don't know if I could have properly processed everything. What it did do for me was turn the white noise down around me.
Yeah.
So when we get all that stuff kind of happening, it just helped me kind of turn it down a little bit.
Yeah.
and to give me more breathing room for the next sort of challenge. So after I had done those, I mean, what is it? Like basically 100 miles in that week, right? In and around there. I was like, wow, I never thought I could do that. And I drove, boom, dopamine hit. I felt good. And then I was like, okay, what else can I do? And then I kept pushing. And then eventually, I started kind of having a bit of a routine. And then I thought, man, maybe I can leverage this in some way for positivity, not only for myself, but for other people. And then, sorry, if you have any questions at any point, I talk a lot, man. So if you need to interrupt me, just let me know.
No, I just wanted to validate that an emotional experience when we tap into our true self, sometimes it can come through physical things, which for me it has as well. I just experienced a little bit of this last week. I did a 25-mile bike ride with the National Ability Center. So guys who were amputees were there. We had people with mental TBIs who weren't functioning real well that guys were riding for them, and they would sit in the bucket. And it was such an emotional journey for me when I finished that I kind of released something emotionally, and I felt a burden lifted. And I was like, check. Like, I did a hard thing. My body let me know that I met the goal, and I released some kind of an emotional response that let me know that my journey to wellness is still ongoing,
Yeah, I mean, those experiences have been happening to me more recently than at the beginning. And I'll just share real quickly an experience I had, and then I'll jump back to the stories so you can kind of get a bit more understanding. Great. But during my last challenge that I did for myself, running 60K a day for 60 days, which is about 38 miles a day for 60 days, wow. I live around the beach in the South Surrey, White Rock area of BC.
Beautiful
right,
area.
Like 5 minutes. Yeah, right. It's like, I mean, I'm 5 minutes to the Washington border by walking. Super close.
Yep.
So I'm running around the beach, and it was early morning. It was decent out. It wasn't terrible. The weather was good, and we have a nice little pier on the White Rock Beach. And I was running on the pier, and I was looking out at the ocean and the way it was moving, and the lights that were kind of shimmering off at the sunlight, and just the way it was moving. Man, I was almost this close, almost brought to tears.
Yeah. And
that never happened to me before. Like, I was so hard, man. Like, had so many walls up, so many walls to not allow myself to feel things. And now I'm at a place where I'm like, yeah, if it happens, it happens. Let me feel the things.
That's right.
And so I wanted to share that real quick because you mentioned that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, when I started thinking, okay, maybe I can leverage this for positivity, in the summer of 2021, I was like, okay, cool, man. Let me run 100 kilometers. Let me run from a town called Chilliwack, BC to the Vancouver airport. And in Chilliwack, British Columbia, there's a training facility for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So I wanted to start there and then all the way to the airport, which is 100 kilometers. And look, man, that's laughable to even consider at the time where I was in my training. But that's how delusional I was. I had it, and I still kind of have it. It's like almost like a delusional self-belief of what I can accomplish.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I just said, oh, let's do this thing. And I had never fundraised before in my life. I never did anything selfless to that degree in my life. Most of my life I've been pretty selfish, just kind of take care of what I need to take care of. But I think, kind of having something to sink my teeth into, and that was not focused on myself, allowed me to process things more for myself and feel better with my mental health. So I was like, okay, cool, man, what am I going to do? So Veterans Day or Remembrance Day here in Canada is the 11th of November.
Yep.
And I wanted to run that 100 kilometers from Chilliwack to the Vancouver airport. And I scheduled it for the 7th of November in commemoration and honor of that day. And coincidentally, it was the first sort of opening of things during the pandemic. So part of my research in leading up to it, we have something called the Poppy Fund for Remembrance Day, which remembers veterans and whatnot. And the Poppy Fund took a major hit during the pandemic because they normally would raise tons of money, but because people couldn't go out and go to the different ceremonies and whatnot. No money was being generated, so I was like, okay, maybe I can do something.
Sure.
As soon as things were opening up, people can get together. So I ran that 100K and I raised excuse me, $21,000 for veterans and first responders. Veterans and first responders with PTSD and other related sort of mental health issues. And man, I never raised money before. I never did any of this stuff. So I was like, wow, okay, that made me feel good about what I was doing. But having said that, I became even more depressed November 8th, 2021, because at the time I felt really isolated and I felt really different. Perhaps even I wasn't different, but I felt very different than everyone around me.
Yeah.
And most of my friends of 18 years in law enforcement, we just didn't connect as much anymore. We weren't really hanging out. Yeah. Whatever the reasons, we kind of move in different directions. And I was like, man, I thought it would have felt better, but I'm like feeling really bad now. And so it was a month or two of me just kind of struggling even more with my mental health. And I was searching for help.
Yeah.
I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I kind of was doing it organically. Mm-hmm. And I came across a guy on my Instagram who's a mutual friend. He's a really close friend of mine now, but I'm part of follow different people on different platforms. And one of my friends, he's a retired RCMP member. He was, on the SWAT team, ERT, for a number of years. And his name is Seb Lavoie. And he was doing some consulting work down in Haiti, and he had taken another person that I didn't know who that person was, and that guy's name is Sean Taylor. And so they both went to Haiti and did some consulting work, and I saw my friend Sebastian coming back from Haiti, and I'm like, who the heck is he traveling with? Who's this guy?
Yeah.
So because the guy's older, like he's 60 now, but at the time I guess he was 57-ish. And so I'm like, so I start tracking him on his Instagram, and I go to his Instagram account, and I'm like, who is this guy? So then I read his Instagram account, and it's like retired tier 1 operator, sniper, recon, like all the things.
Yep.
Right. And but also professional athlete and blah 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 blah. Whatever. And so right up at the beginning, okay, I know what tier 1 is. I know what JTF2 is. Most Canadians probably don't know. And probably most of your audience doesn't know what JTF2 is. But JTF2 is Canada's tier 1 operations special forces unit. Works closely with SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, and various other tier 1 operating units. So he was an assaulter and a sniper on the teams when he was on it. And he was a plank holder. And a plank holder is someone that we use in Canada as a term for these people that were selected to be on the team when it was first created. So he was one of the first members of that Tier 1 unit when it was created in Canada 30 years ago. Anyway, so I find this guy, and I'm like, okay, so they're traveling. I was at the airport December 2021 when they landed. And there was a big snowstorm here, which usually in this area doesn't have much of a snowstorm, but there was one. And Sean Taylor lives in a town about 7 hours from where I am in the mountains. So his flight was canceled. So and at this time we had been following each other, didn't really know each other, but we were following each other on social media. And he put up something in his story saying he's, his flight's canceled. Anyone want to hang out for a coffee or something? So I hit him up immediately. And I was like, hey man, yeah, cool. Let's go. So I met up with him. We go for a coffee. And I'm like probably in the lowest point in terms of my mental health at this time. Or at least I felt I was. And we sat down and, 30 minutes turned into 3 hours.
Yeah. And
we just kind of chatted, and man, it felt good for me to be able to connect with someone that had zero judgment, that had given me the space to just be myself.
Yeah.
And I get emotional every single time I think about it.
Yeah.
Luckily for me now, I'm not as broken. Otherwise, I'd be crying right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so we're talking, and after our conversation, I was like, hey man, can we keep doing this? And now, mind you, he lives 7 hours away by driving.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, if you think it'll help, sure, we can. So we just did Zoom calls, man. Like we probably about 4 to 6 times a week.
Yeah.
We would Zoom call and with no time limit, just kind of talking and connecting. Not in an environment where someone's telling me what to do. Just two dudes hanging out, just chatting, almost like we're having a coffee.
Yeah, and this is so important, Sach. This is like the key to recovery is connection. When you get outside and you're doing the physical pieces, I'm a big proponent of physical because it challenges. You can check the block. You can get rid of some of that anger that's inside every day when you get it out physically. But when we connect to other people and we look outward and we connect, that is where that healing really starts to generate. It changes our mind. It changes our heart. I love the fact that you just validated that again for our listeners. Finding a source of connection that makes an impact to you on your mental health, on your overall well-being, is motivating. It's inspiring. Find that connection wherever you are in the world. Yeah, please.
No, I agree 100%, man. And listen, I want to, I wasn't that guy.
Yeah.
Right. Just to be clear, because I don't want people thinking, oh yeah, so there's certain type of people can do that. Bro, I wasn't that guy. I was an asshole.
Yeah.
I was like hard.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't going to talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, fortunately for me, I came across him because I don't know if he didn't come into my life. I don't know where I'd be right now. Honestly, like I don't know if that would mean suicide or if that means I'm on this path or what. Like I don't know what that means.
Yep.
But what I do mean is I didn't really have much respect for many people. Mm-hmm. And right out the gate, he kind of didn't demand it or command it. He earned it based upon how he was talking to me, and then also his pedigree, not just from the tier 1 stuff, but all the other things that he's done in his life. And so that allowed me to, it's something that we kind of chat about is like the right person, the right time, delivering the right type of information.
Love
it.
And
so for me, that's what it was. And so we were talking probably for 2 or 3 months, almost every single day for hours at a time. And he learned about me. I learned about him. And what I learned about him was that he lived a life that I wanted to live in the way that he lived it. Not the person he is, but the way he lived his life of service.
Yeah.
Without expecting anything in return. Because for me, it was confusing, man. I'm like, why are you helping me? You're a Caucasian dude. I'm a brown dude. We have no connection whatsoever.
Yeah.
Why are you helping me?
Yeah.
And that was my trauma talking, right? 18 years in law enforcement, I didn't trust a single person.
Yeah.
And I was so curious as to why are you helping? Why? Like, what's the point? Like, what are you doing it for? And I understand now, because I'm trying to be that type of person now. And so
I'll say this, Sach, you are that type of person right now, not trying to be. When I reached out to you, you didn't know me from anybody, but the first thing you did was like, yeah, let's get on a call. And there was energy there that was so positive that I was like, man, this guy here has got to be on this program and talk to my audience because your energy is inspiring, brother. So, you're not becoming, you are.
Well, I'm doing my best every single day.
Yeah.
And I think so when I had this conversation or these conversations with Sean, I learned about him and his military service and then his entrepreneurial work, then his professional athlete stuff. So he's had about 7 different careers that he's really maximized and optimized and became the best at.
Yeah.
So he, from tier 1, and then I want to give a bit of background on him, just to give a bit of insight as to how I was kind of helped, and it didn't require too much other than a conversation. But I think it's important to kind of highlight who Sean Taylor is because he's in my hero's journey. He was that mentor that entered at a time that I needed some support and help, and it kind of just lifted me up to help me achieve the things that I've done on my own.
Yeah.
So anyways, he was, retired after, I think 15 years, I think, as a operator. And he was the tip of the spear, at least as I understand it.
That's a long career.
And then as an operator.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Body, mind,
He
everything suffers.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's gone through the things, right?
Yep.
And so he did that, and after his, and I think at the time life was very different for military personnel compared to now.
Yep.
Not saying that it's perfect now, but it was very not. Back then, it was not good at all.
Correct.
So he was a tier 1 operator in the morning, and by the evening, he was a civilian. They didn't have any transitional stuff for him at all. So he had to figure it out all on his own.
Right.
And so he went to the Ontario Police College, taught use of force for a year, quit that job, and then he went to go back to school. He went to school to learn information systems or programming or something like that. And after he did that, he ended up teaching at the same facility. So he started teaching, and then he also wrote a textbook in that space. So he wrote a textbook in that information technology. And after a number of years there, he's like, okay, I'm done here. And then he went into private security, did that for a number of years. After he did private security, he ended up getting married, had a couple kids, or maybe one kid at the time, and thought, okay, maybe it's a better thing to not do the international private security for safety reasons and family life. So let's open up a business. So he opened up a coffee shop. Hence my love of coffee now. But he opened up a coffee shop, and and these are cool stories that I like to share, and they're his stories, but I'll share them anyway. He opened up this coffee shop, and then a Starbucks opens across the street, right? So he's like, oh man, I'm going to be mangled, because he was just new to business, right? And the company was called, it was a franchise. So he was a franchisee. It was called Second Cup. And within 2 years, he was the number 1 Second Cup in all of North America out of 200 something different franchisees. Amazing. So he got rid of that, and then became a stay-at-home dad for 2 sons, while his wife was an engineer, doing her things. And then he took up mountain biking, and in his early 40s. And he started mountain biking, and then from there he became a 24-hour solo mountain bike racer. So, riding your mountain bike for 24 hours in the mountains. And eventually he became a world champion in that sport. And then through that, he became a performance coach and coached hundreds of athletes all over the world in that sport and various other sports, I think. So anyway, so he's run the gambit of different careers and learning and understanding. So what he essentially did in those 2 months for me was performance coached me out of where I was. Without me understanding that's what was happening. And, he helped me understand what my purpose is.
Yeah.
And, the healing and the connection is one part. But I think what's also important is and especially for men, I think, and especially for men who are leaving any type of service, is figuring out what your purpose is. What's your meaning in life? What are you going to do? And for me, I lost that. And I think fundamentally that's what happened to me.
I think most of us did.
Yeah.
Most of us did.
So, yeah.
I just commented the other day to my wife. I said, me making all of this content for YouTube and having private conversations with veterans around the globe from all different countries, it has redefined what I was missing from the service. I'm back to finding a purpose, and it's not me. Yes, I'm doing self-development, I'm doing things, but my purpose is this global audience. It's you. It's others that I'm going to come in contact with here in the near future. No better purpose than other people.
Yeah, and when you're of service to other people, you're not really worried about your own garbage.
Right.
You're not focused on it. Right? And it just sort of kind of unfolds and organically kind of sorts itself out when you're focused on doing those things. And for me, that's kind of what happened when I'm sitting with Sean, and he's like, okay, man, get a pen and paper. What's your why? Why are you here? What do you want to do? And look, he didn't tell me, but I just sat down for 2 or 3 weeks trying to figure that out. And I sat down and I kind of wrote a mission statement for my life.
Yeah.
And that's what I started with. Now, my purpose has evolved, but my mission statement has relatively stayed the same. And my mission statement for my life is I want to maximize my skill sets for everyone around me to affect permanent positive change.
Love it.
That's my mission. That's my mission statement.
Love
now, that won't ever change because I'm always trying to be better every single day.
Yeah.
So I'm always in that process. And my purpose in life, your purpose, I think it can evolve multiple times and it can shift and change, and that's okay. My whole purpose right now is to execute against running across Canada next year and breaking the record for the fastest time and raising a ton of awareness and tons of money for people that need it. That's my purpose right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I identified 4 years ago.
That's
now,
amazing.
Ever since, I've just been executing against that goal. So every challenge really was preparing me for my ultimate goal, which is next year.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that's who I am. That's kind of how I found what I'm doing, and kind of my origin story. Now, I don't know where things are going, man. I haven't even planned after summer of 2025.
Yeah.
Because that's when I'm running. Everything else, now I live my life in maybe a place of uncertainty, and I'm cool with that, man. Because now I understand who I am as a person,
Yeah.
and what I'm capable of, and I have confidence in various different ways. And as long as I do my best every single day with a righteous and good mindset, the outcome will be good. So that's kind of how I move.
Yeah, that's incredible. Something that impresses me is one, your vulnerability to tell the story that so many people keep silent, which is of anxiety and depression. And if anyone on this channel is familiar with this on their own journey, depression is a dark place. It's not something you can remove with a pill. It's in you until you can find that root cause and tear it out of yourself. And that is not a short process. It's a journey, which is why I talk about this wellness journey so many different times. Sach, you impressed me in a lot of ways. One, you were willing to be humble in your hardest circumstance, when you felt like you were at your lowest. You were willing to have humility and accept tutorage or mentoring by somebody else that you really didn't know personally yet, but you jumped on the opportunity to have coffee. And I know from my battle with anxiety that I don't want to leave the house, let alone go meet a stranger somewhere. But you took that step, and that leap is like a catalyst on a journey. You could go a different direction, but you took this one, and that one was the right choice, to be in the right place, the right time, with the right people, doing the right things. And when you do that, everything seems to line up and put you on a path to ultimate success. And I think you're on that path. And whatever I can do, or people on this channel can do, to support you on this journey, this goal that you've made this next year, we would love to help. And I saw in some of the content that you've created previously, you mentioned, hey, I'm going to finish my last 5K. I'm in this location. Come with me. I would love to participate with you on that last 5K. So,
well, hey, man, it's for me, I look at it like, so when people kind of come to my platform and see what I'm doing, everyone thinks I'm a runner, and I get it, because that's what I'm doing right now, right? And a friend of mine said to me not too long ago, was like, "Oh, you're a runner now, okay? Like that's what you are." I go, "No, man, I am whatever I decide to be."
Yeah.
And right now, that's what I'm doing.
Awesome.
And if I decide to do something else after, I'll do that. And for me, I'm using running as a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool to connect with other people.
Yeah.
Because everyone understands what running is.
Yeah.
Everyone understands the difficulty and everyone understands distance.
Yeah.
Someone understands what 60, 70 miles every single day is.
Yeah.
It's kind of know that's like, wow. So that's kind of why I chose running. And for one reason, another reason is that in Canada, running across the country is a thing. We had someone 40 years ago named Terry Fox, who started the sort of running across Canada thing for other people. And he was, and I'll just share with the audience, maybe they've heard of him, maybe they haven't, but Terry Fox is people throw around the word legend all the time now. In my opinion, Terry Fox is an actual legend. They have multiple statues of him across our country here. And so he was a 22, 23-year-old young man in the early 1980s. He ended up having cancer. And because he had cancer in his leg, and they ended up amputating his, I can't remember which left or right leg, whichever it was, above the knee.
Yeah.
Right. So he experienced a lot of when you get as a young man who's an athlete and has their leg removed, probably went through some dark times.
Yep.
And when he was in the hospital, he saw children in the hospital who had cancer, and it gave him perspective. And the perspective that he got was, oh, things can always be worse, but we should do more. So he decided to create something called the Marathon of Hope. And he wanted to run across Canada. And he would run a marathon every single day on, probably one of the crappiest prosthetics you could probably get. And he would run a marathon every single day to run across the country to raise money and awareness for cancer research. Now, he didn't make it across because his cancer came back halfway through and he ended up passing away. But he created something. And since his passing, over $1 billion has been raised in cancer research in his name, just because he did something. So the ripple effects off of that are amazing. So in Canada, that's a thing.
Yeah.
And as I see it, the mental health crisis, not only for first responders and veterans, but for people in general.
Correct.
I look at it like our modern day cancer.
Yeah.
And if I can play a tiny, small little part to continue Terry Fox's legacy in this space, to run across the country and raise, I don't know, maybe millions of dollars, whatever.
Who knows? Journey's yet to be made. Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the idea came from. It came from Terry Fox.
Yeah, that's amazing. Maybe in the last couple minutes here, I want to give you a chance to talk to our global audience. And mind you, I've got a large audience in Iraq. I've got some Palestinians. I've got some Israelis. I've got Pakistanis. So I've got a large audience of people who are listening today. Maybe you can sum up in 1 minute or 2 minutes some advice that you would give to this audience today that you want them to take away from our chance to meet today.
Awesome. Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, to be honest. And I can share what I did and what I learned. And I think we should always be engaging our curiosity. So if you're curious, or if you're not, let's say if you're not a curious person, cultivate it. Because if you're able to cultivate curiosity, then you can engage things. And if you engage things, then you can figure out what you're passionate about. And once you have a bit of passion, then you can start taking some action in a direction. Because when you have a bit of passion, then you get excitement. And when you're excited, you start feeling good.
Yeah.
And then you enter into a space of trying to understand something. Then now you're occupied.
Yeah.
Now you're doing something. Now you're learning. So for me, chase and engage curiosity. Don't turn away from it. Because I know for me, when I was younger, I'd be curious, but I'd be like, okay, whatever. And then I keep moving forward rather than, okay, I'm going to figure that out right now. So curiosity leads to passion, which leads to action. And those are the three things that I've been constantly doing every single day. And those things have helped me because I was curious to meet a guy named Sean Taylor. That's what led me to talk to the dude. And when I talked to that guy, then I started figuring out what I'd be passionate about through conversation. And when you start having passion, now you can sink your teeth into something and start taking action.
Yeah. That is brilliant, and I love that for this audience, and I love it for myself today. I've taken notes the whole time. I can't wait to implement some of this into myself. Look, the time you've taken today has been well spent. I sure appreciate you sharing with us your journey, your passion, and why you're doing what you're doing, and for all the veterans and first responders who are benefiting from this awareness that you're raising. I give you my thanks today, and brother, thanks for being on this channel today and sharing with us your journey. I look forward to inviting you back on in the future and sharing some of the results of some of the things that you're implementing today. And I think that our viewers will be curious to learn more about it as well. So thanks again for your time today.
Hey, man, thanks for reaching out and connecting. I love having conversations with cool people, so I'll do it anytime, any day.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.